Risk. Okay, we are on the risk. So in this definition given by Dodge guideline, risk is the combination of likelihood and severity. So meaning to say risk is likelihood or probability times severity. Risk we can calculate. So that's why people normally associate, when people talk about risk, people always say calculated risk. As in my previous slide here, you see, risk is the chance or probability big or small. When something is big or small, meaning to say we can quantify the risk or we can calculate the risk. Okay, so how to calculate the risk? If we attach figure to probability, for instance, we can use Likert scale, Likert scale. Let's say we attach figure 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is a normal Likert scale. So 5 meaning to say most likely. Let's say most likely. And then 1 is least likely. And in between, there is an increase of likelihood. Okay. And then how about S? S is severity. What is severity? How serious? If accident happen, and then how serious? Let's say we attach figure 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5 is more serious, and 1 is least serious. Let's say, okay, let's say possibility of accident happening is 3. Then when that accident happen, people will get serious injury in term of maybe 4. So when you time this figure, 3 times 4 equivalent to 12. So this 3 times 4, this is what we call risk assessment. Okay, this is what we call risk assessment. Now you already perform risk assessment. And what is the risk value that you get is 12. And if you refer to risk matrix, which we are going to talk later on, this one can be associated with medium risk, medium. And once you identify the risk is medium, then perhaps you will find ways to ways or measure in order to control this risk not becoming medium. You want to make it low. Okay, so this is what we call risk control. So HIRAC is the combination of hazard identification, risk assessment, and risk control. So you did that thing as the whole process. Okay, and then risk management. What is risk management? The word risk management, when the word management is being mentioned, normally, okay, when management, the word management is around, it normally refer to a few elements. Okay, so what is inside the management? There must be a few elements or wording. In this situation, risk management mean combination of 4 wording. Okay, what is the 4 wording? First wording, I call it RM. RM is the risk management, equivalent to HI plus RA plus RC plus RR. HI is the hazard identification, RA is the risk assessment, RC is the risk control, and RR is the risk review. When you combine these 4 wording or 4 element or 4 process, then this is what we call risk management. Okay. All right. Okay. Now we want to show example of we already define in general what is hazard, what is risk and danger. Perhaps you might not get that thing yet. Okay, never mind. Let's take example. This example from this document, HSC. What is HSC? HSC is basically health and safety executive. It's based in UK. If you want to do assignment or whatever things with regard to safety, you can go to HSC website. They have a lot of resources about safety and health in UK especially. Okay, so they have, if you go to the website, they ask certain section specifically for risk assessment, risk management. So they define hazard as anything that can cause harm, similar to our DOSH, but they make it simplify. So in their document, they do give example of hazard. Okay, let's say things. Okay, thing. Let me get my pen. Things. Example, knife. Knife can be considered as source. Remember, hazard is equivalent to source or situation. Simple definition of hazard is source or situation that can cause harm. Okay, harm mean injury, illness, property damage, or damage to the environment, or in combination. So knife can be considered as source of hazard. Why? Because it can be harm. It can basically create harm such as cut. Okay, and in fact, people got killed. If a lot of blood coming out from your body. So that is example. Okay, so knife is an example of hazard. Why? Because it can be harmful. And then substance. Substance. Example, benzene. Benzene, petrol, diesel, whatever things, they are in similar category anyway. They can be harmful in such a way. Prolonged exposure to benzene, petrol, or even diesel can cause leukemia, some sort of cancer. Okay, if you remember in Pasir Gudang, okay, Pasir Gudang is southern of Johor, very close to Singapore. A few months back, okay, there were cases of exposure of chemical from dumping waste, okay, chemical dumping waste. It was not a gas leak, a chemical leak or whatever, but just simply dumping. People dump onto the river for many, many, many years, and then for sure, because the quantity is getting more and more, and then it basically surface out and goes into the air, and you see how many thousands of people suffer. And one of the main compound found basically was benzene, all right? And then material, example, asbestos. Why asbestos? Asbestos now is being banned in many countries, but in Malaysia, we do not totally ban all type of asbestos. There are so many types. Asbestos basically being used a lot a long time ago, even until now, because it is a good insulator, being used as a roof, in the plumbing, as a ceiling, or whatever. It is a very good insulator, okay? But the issue with asbestos, if you use in the plumbing, for instance, later on, long time, it will basically become fragile, okay? Become fragile, and it will turn into dust, and that dust will go into the water, and then we drink the water. It will stay in our body for a very long time, and it will cause mesothelioma, some kind of cancer also. Okay, so that's why asbestos is being banned in certain, especially Western world, because they already know the side effect of asbestos. And then electricity. Okay, why it is harmful? Because you can get electric shock, electrocution, etc. Condition. Remember, hazard is a source or situation or condition. Now we do have one example of condition. Let's say floor. Okay, floor. If the floor is dry, that is a type of condition, then the floor seems to be safe. There is no slip, trip, and falls. But then if you change the condition of the floor from dry floor into wet floor, then it is very harmful because you can cause slip, trip, and falls. Okay, that is an example of condition. When we talk about condition, you can refer to weather condition, hot weather, cold weather. Let's say working under hot weather, hot temperature, or even cold temperature will have some kind of health effect. And then process, welding. Okay, so while you are doing welding, for instance, for sure you will release some kind of vapor. Okay, that vapor is very dangerous. If you inhale, it have a lot of heavy mineral that eventually lead to cancer as well. Okay, not only the vapor is very dangerous, but the light, because it is too bright, okay, while doing welding, it is too bright that you just simply cannot look directly at the light. Similar to looking at the LCD. LCD light is quite bright. You just simply cannot. Okay, once you just simply look at the LCD bulb there, okay, then somehow you will feel some kind of headache. Okay, that is example. And then practice hard rock mining. You will get silicosis. Why hard rock mining? You get silicosis because silicosis has something to do with dust. This is what we call the dust. And remember, construction industry, we do work with a lot of dust. Dust coming from concrete work, cement, etc., etc., and being exposed to dust for a very long time. At the end of the day, you will get silicosis, something to do with the lung. Okay, all kind of dust gets stuck to your lung. Okay, this is an example of hazard. Can you identify in this scenario what is the hazard? Okay, remember, hazard is the source or situation. Always remember that, a source or situation. So similar to this one, what is the hazard? Okay, this one or this one. So what is the hazard? Again, you notice the hazard is what are people trying to avoid? Simply the ball. So the ball is the source. Okay, so people trying to avoid. And then in this situation, you see this guy working at height. Working at height is an example of hazard. Why? Because you can fall down. Okay, so automatically one type of hazard is working at height. That would be the situation or condition. And then another issue with regard to this picture, that guy, of course, working in height. In order to be at that height, it must be supported by all kind of platform. This is what we call a working platform. And if you look at the another source of hazard could be poorly constructed, or even the material of the platform could be very poor, and it will result in that guy falling down. Okay, so there are two scenarios here. One is the material itself that used to construct the working platform, and then automatically this guy had to work at a certain height. So that could be another situation. All right, then this example. working in the excavation area. And you know what? Every year, uh, among the major causes of fatal, other than falling down, is basically you are getting stuck in the excavated area or whatever, and all the bang, this is what we call the bang, or the excavated hole or area, even the rock, the soil collapse onto you. Okay, normally this could be another source of fatality that happen all around the world. Okay, so the wall or the bank of the excavated hole or the rock there is basically we can consider as hazard. What is the danger? What is danger? Danger is basically relative exposure to hazard. So because that guy is being in that excavated area, so he basically putting himself in danger. And dangerous situation could be because of the very tight hole, he just simply cannot run away. If, for instance, excavated area basically have some kind of ways or some kind of support system, whenever thing going to fall, it will give you some kind of warning system, whatever, then relatively you are in a little danger. The hazard might be there, but the difference between danger and hazard is basically relative exposure to the hazard. How much do you expose yourself to that kind of danger? Okay. Then another situation. So this guy working at height again. Okay. This is very tall, basically ladder anyway. And then the ladder itself could be the source of hazard. Defective ladder. Okay. And working at height, of course, uh, you you is one of the category of hazard. And then again, this situation. So this guy is repairing something, and the plank here, plank, okay, he's sitting on a piece of wood or plank, which is not in a properly constructed method. Okay, just imagine if this guy, one of the guy moving away, forgot that he is holding the weight of another guy, what would happen? And then ladder. Okay, ladder is always source of hazard. Remember, the main causes of fatality is basically fall. Fall normally fall from height, and normally people is working using the ladder, poorly constructed ladder, because they want to extend ladder or whatever, and then they will do some kind of modification. That is the issue. And then this is another example of hazard. Okay, so this girl, you see, at the end of the day, there could be situation and basically source. Situation is basically panic situation, and then the source is basically the hole there. If the hole is not there, she might be safe by now. Okay, we never know. All right, so that is basically hazard. Remember, hazard is a source or situation. So risk management. The word risk management basically coming from four different elements. One is we call it hazard identification. Okay. Then assessing risk assessment. Then the third one is basically risk control. The fourth one is basically the risk review. So once you have all these four processes, that qualify to be called as a risk management. Okay, hazard identification. Hazard could be coming from many different sources. What could be the sources of hazard? Okay, We can classify the hazard according to name, for instance, physical, electrical, explosive, biological, chemical, ergonomics, mechanical, and etc. Okay. Physical, example of physical hazard: noise, vibration, extreme temperature, cold, hot, radiation, machinery, equipment, working at height. See, electrical, fire, explosion, confined space, working in confined space. There are a lot of fatality also when people working in a confined space. And then sleep, trip and fall, vehicle, even walking near water or under water condition where you have to work constructing a jetty, whatever, okay, that could be considered as physical hazard. And you see, accident with regard to vehicle, construction vehicle at construction site is also a lot, because at construction site there is no lane, people just moving around freely, but the construction site keep changes every day. You never know. There is maybe you come in the morning, it's okay, but then by the time you go back, there could be a hole people are making. So we must basically properly manage traffic inside the construction site as well. And then chemical. Chemical can be classified as a toxic or explosive. When normally this kind of chemical, sometimes you are very familiar with this chemical. Let's say what we call thinner. Okay, thinner is being used a lot to dissolve paint, especially oil-based paint. Okay, but thinner in a small quantity is very friendly, but you can try to bring thinner in a container, in a big container, in a big bulk. When they are in bulk, they can be highly flammable, even for thinner, not to mention other material. Okay. And then biological hazard. Biological hazard could be wild dog, snake, scorpion, and then until the small one, fungi, parasite, or even virus. Now we are dealing with the virus. Okay, that could be a potential hazard. And remember, we in the construction site, we are working in the construction project. We might be exposed to this kind of biological hazard, because normally when we start construction in unknown area, in a rural area, such as laying pipe in certain area, normally you need to bring the pipe, and then you just need to put the pipe that encroach into a few 100-kilometer area, for instance, where nobody live there other than wild animal and etc. So normally the surveyor is the first person that will go into that site. So they will get first, and then come all the civil engineer and whatnot. Okay. So because normally when we construct in unknown area. Okay. Unless you are working at the urban area, that will be different story. And then you might encounter either crocodile, snake, scorpion, or whatever. Okay. And this so-called snake can be considered as a biological hazard. They are very dangerous. But somehow, how can people can be very friendly? Snake charmer, for instance. Even though the snake could be dangerous, but there are people who play around with snake. Why? They might have gone through so-called risk assessment. See, in risk assessment, you can assess, you can calculate the risk, and then you can come up with a control measure. Okay, once you understand certain behavior of a wild animal, then perhaps you can control those things. That could be the scenario. Even though the risk might be high, but if you know how to control that thing, then it can be minimized. But whatever it is, at the end of the day, when people working in with a wild animal, you never know, huh? Because this animal you cannot be trusted. Okay, then ergonomics. Okay, what is ergonomics? So ergonomic is the health aspect. Okay, remember safety and health. Safety and health is the health aspect in terms of what we call physiological. Okay, physiological, your body. Okay, you do not want to hurt your body in terms of your muscle and muscular skeletal. We call it muscular skeletal, your muscle and your frame, your bone structure. Okay, so that is what ergonomic is all about. So what is ergonomic? Ergonomic is about, there is a sign associated with ergonomic that normally people in the industrial design apply ergonomic a lot, but now this kind of thing, ergonomic have goes into many disciplines. Okay, so ergonomic is simply say when we design the workplace or tool that had human by right, that tool and workstation or workplace or work environment should basically be designed in accordance to our body. Okay, so in other words, as a human, we are not supposed to modify our musculoskeletal or body structure in order to fit the work environment. Once you need to modify your body, and then it is not natural anymore, then you will get all kind of pain everywhere in your body. By right, all the tool equipment should be designed according to what we call human body, where we can reach the certain limit that we can reach, we can bend and whatnot. Okay, that is the concept of ergonomics. Okay, example, just a small video on ergonomics.
Excuse me, doctor, we don't hear the video's audio.
Oh, is it really? But you can see the picture.
Yeah, we just see the picture and read the.
Sorry,
We see the picture and read what text is on the video.
but not the audio.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. All right. So never mind. I can share you the video later on. Okay. And then that is ergonomic, just a small concept. Okay, occupational disease or illness. Okay, the health aspect. See, you notice that safety and health, the health aspect. Let's take a look at some of the issue. Healthy tissue here. Okay, healthy tissue. This could be the lung. Okay, and then healthy tissue of 90 years old school teacher. Okay, which is not very much different from the healthy tissue, maybe because due to certain occupation. But how about only 40 years old miners? Miner meaning to say people working in the mining industry. Okay, people working in the mining industry, they are being exposed a lot to the dust. So they will get silicosis. And you see the lung condition. even though you are still young, but your occupation will influence your health. This is the issue. And then not to forget about the back pain. In US, for instance, 30% of back pain is the amount of compensation being claimed by workers. When this back pain has something to do with the issue of ergonomics. When you want to lift something, you must maintain your S curve in your body. So you must know basically your position in order to lift the heavy load. Otherwise, you will get back pain. And once you get the back pain, at the end of the day, you could be paralyzed. That is the issue. And nowadays, even a lot of people get back pain due to nothing because simply sometimes you use a very bad mattress. Okay, old mattress, something like that you have been using for many years, and at the end of the day you will get back pain, not only due to heavy lifting, but basically it has something to do with back posture. Okay, sitting posture or even sleeping posture can get you into the back pain as well. And then not to forget, we can be exposed through many things into our body through inhalation. Okay, we can inhale. Sometimes the exposure could be coming from our eyes, nose, because in our eyes, especially, there are a lot of small pore that many virus fungi can get into our eyes easily. Okay, similar to the COVID virus anyway. And then don't forget about our skin. Our skin being the largest organ, okay, outside of the body, can get in contact with a lot of things. So that is how the certain thing can get into our body through the body contact, through inhalation, through breathing, through our eyes, nose, and all kind of hole inside of our body. That is the issue. Okay, psychosocial. Okay, psychosocial. One of the thing is the shift work. You see, working in a shift basically have some kind of implication toward your health, because normally people who are working at shift, they already adjust they need to adjust their biological clock. Naturally, Allah or God have invented us to work during the day and sleep at night. But now people have come up with all kind of system to work 24 hours. So that is not good for our body. Okay, even though you can work, but in the long term, there are some kind of health issue associated with that. And not to mention accident. When you are trying to move into one shift to another, your concentration level is at the lowest during that transition. That is when you get accident can happen. Okay, not not to mention about the other issue, the health issue, and the stress is the worst scenario. Okay, so in psychosocial, stress is something that we want to avoid. Okay, we do have one big topic about stress later on. Okay, and then not to forget about violence. Okay, violence at the workplace, and then harassment at the workplace. This is all the psychosocial issue. Meaning to say, uh, we do not want people who go to work very healthy, very happy. So after they go to work for years and years, at the end of the day, they become depressed. They are not happy due to many things that happen at the workplace. So that is not the concept of well-being. By right, when people go to work, they they should be the same person going to the work and coming back from the work. They should be the happy person. If they go to work happy, and they should come back happy as well. Okay, that is the psychosocial aspect. Okay, maybe I will cover these things later on inside the stress. Okay. Okay. You see, according to World Health Organization, WHO, that I mark yellow here, 1 in every 5 of us, okay, will have some kind of mental health disorder in our lifetime. Meaning to say, for sure, we are being put under stress, a lot of stress during our student years, and not to mention during our work life. That is even greater stress, okay? Because people expect more from you when you work. It involves money anyway. See, 1 every 5. We already stressful in any way, but the issue is that we might not get into the position where we are going into depression mode yet. But the stress is there already, okay? And in Malaysia, this year, because this statistic has been there for a few years before this, in 2020 or now, depression is expected to be number 2 illness. Prior to this, we never heard depression as one of the top 10 even. Number 1 normally involve what we call heart attack, and then stroke, and then what else? It could be cancer, it could be diabetic, or whatever. But not in the list is basically depression. But now it suddenly get into the list. So a lot of people nowadays are very stressful. Okay, that is the issue. And do we need stress in our life? Well, the question is that unfortunately we need stress because stress basically related to performance. See, when we put pressure, the stress, the performance will be increased. It is like a car. If you want the car to be moving very fast, then you need to press the gas pedal or the petrol pedal. Okay, otherwise it will not be moving as fast as you want. Similarly, in the work environment, we must be pressured. Otherwise, we are not going to perform or do something extra. Okay, but the issue is that we do not know the peak because everybody have their own limit. Okay, have their own limit. Only that person know their limit. Okay, nobody else know because you will feel that thing happening inside your body. Okay, but nowadays there are a lot of research. We call it symptom that we can measure in terms of stress. Either it could be emotional symptom, sleeping symptom, then a lot more. Okay, a lot more. We will talk about that thing in the stress topic later on. But you will know when you are in a very deep stress, one you experience this fatigue. Fatigue means you become so tired. Okay, so tired that you do not recover very easily. Normal tired is okay. If you are tired, then you take a 10-minute or 20-minute rest, then you will recover back. But this kind of tired is different. Okay, that's what we call fatigue. And then if you do not do something, you will go into exhaustion. Exhaustion is basically you flat out. Okay, really exhausted. You flat out. And if this thing persisted, then ill health. Sometimes you can get some kind of disease. You can go into coma or paralyzed. Coma or paralyzed not because you get some kind of stroke, but simply because you feel so tired. The body basically need rest. That's the issue. And the worst scenario is the mental breakdown. If it is not being corrected or you do not de-stress your body, at the end of the day, This is when people trying to jump off bridge or building because they are in this kind of situation. So stress basically have the long-term effect into our body. Okay, I do have video for that, but since the audio might not be working, so never mind. I will share with you in the e-learning or whatnot. Okay, and then mechanical hazard with regard to the material defect, design deficiency, and etc., etc., assembly error, or basically the installation collapse. Example, see, this is an example of what? This is a piling frame, okay, collapse on the moving car. Just imagine that car become flat out. So somebody must be died there, inside there. And then what else? Even this crane, okay, inside there is a people inside there, you see. So that guy died already. Okay, all right, the process of risk management. Okay, process of risk management. So how to conduct risk management? We start with this one. Classify activities. Okay, classify activities mean we are in the construction industry. We do have our activities. Remember, during planning and scheduling, we come up with a work breakdown structure. What is the purpose of coming up with the work breakdown structure is to list out all of the activities. Okay, why? Because from that activities, then only we will know whether there are hazard or not with regard to activities. Okay, the work process. Then we can identify the hazard. Then we can assess the risk, come up with risk control, and then risk review from time to time. Okay, now let's go into the first step. Step number one is hazard identification. How to identify the hazard. Okay, for experienced people, let's say you have been working at the construction site for many, many years, for sure your experience will help a lot. You already know. When people working, doing some kind of work, automatically you know. Okay, you can inform people to be careful because out of this activity there are certain type of hazard. Okay, that would be based on experience. But even without experience, we can basically identify through many ways. For instance, try to review legislation and code of practice. There are a lot of code of practice legislation around, not only in Malaysia. You can Google that normally will give you all kind of hazard alert. If you subscribe to HSE email, so from time to time they will basically email you about the latest hazard alert. Okay, that would be example. Try to take a look at the publication by agency or authority. In Malaysia, for instance, we do have DOSH, we do have NIOSH. NIOSH is again is a government agency for training purposes and for R&D. So they do have expert there that can give you all kind of advice from time to time. Review international or Malaysian standard. Review industry or trade association. In Malaysia, for instance, we do have CIDB, Construction Industry Development Board, that take care of the construction industry. They are also sometimes, even though their main job is not to take care of the safety and health, because we already have DOSH department, but because they do have to take care of the construction industry as a whole, so sometimes they do release something with regard to safety and health as well. And then review other published document, and then we can basically develop a checklist. Okay, develop checklist. We can conduct a survey or inspection go to the construction site and do observation, and then accident report or whatever the database that we collect could be a potential source of information because we can learn from that. Okay, whenever accident happen, normally organization will conduct investigation and they will come out with what we call accident investigation report. Inside those reports, they must be mentioning about causes of accident. When they mention about causes of accident, they could basically mention the source of hazard. So we can get that thing easily. And then we perform job safety analysis, consult with employee. This is the best way because employee basically know the hazard very well. They are working with the hazard every day. And then seeking advice from specialists. You know what? If you want to be rich, one of the area that you can zoom in is basically risk management. Risk management, being a risk manager nowadays pay you a lot. Risk management basically do not apply in the safety itself. It can be applied in the whole life cycle of the construction. So you can basically go for courses and then you can get some kind of certification that call you certified risk manager. Okay. So risk manager basically people can call you to come to their workplace and you do the risk assessment for the organization. Organization might not have the knowledge to do that, but they engage so-called the third party and they will pay you fees. And then what else? Okay, if you go through all kind of exercise to identify the hazard, at the end of the day, you will get the list of hazard. This is an example of list of hazard that I did in one of my paper. You can basically Google my paper, hazard at construction site. Then you will get this kind of picture. Okay, so from HSE checklist, I developed the checklist so that I can bring this checklist to construction site to identify what kind of hazard around, okay, what kind of hazard available at the construction site. That was my research a long time ago. So this is an example of checklist. Then if you can also Google this one, top 16 hazard in the construction site. So you will get this picture, okay. For instance, if you want to construct high-rise building, there could be a lot of hazard around, and 16 top hazard could be associated with what? Number one, fire hazard. And then what else? All kind of things being mentioned here that are the hazard normally available during high-rise construction. And similarly, okay, when we are working at certain factory, such as a concrete batching plant, there are also a lot of hazard. Okay, so hazard actually are everywhere. Even you're sitting in your room or your house, if you look around, there are a lot of hazard. Okay, everything hanging on top of your head basically is a potential hazard to be falling down. And then there are electricity hazard, could be fire hazard, a lot of things. You are working or dealing with hazard every day. Okay, so in another word, we simply cannot avoid working with hazard. But what we can do, not to be afraid of the hazard, we need to assess the hazard or the risk. Then basically we come up with the control measure. That is the way to go forward. Then step number 2, risk assessment. Okay, risk assessment. How do we assess risk? Remember, there are 2 dimensions with regard to risk. One is what we call probability, and then another one is the severity. Okay, probability of accident happening And then when those things happen, how serious? Okay, there are two dimensions of the risk, meaning to say risk can be calculated. And with regard to probability or chance or likelihood, okay, normally we have to look at the frequency, the duration, the outcome. Okay, these are the three things that we must look at, those things in order to assess the risk, whether it is small, big, and medium. An example, this is just an example of probability. We can have this 4 Likert scale, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is just example. 1 being highly unlikely, 2 unlikely, 3 likely, number 4 is very likely. And that's how you attach figure to the probability. And similarly, in terms of seriousness, you can attach 4 as fatal, 3 major injury, 2 minor injury, and 1 is negligible. If you use 4 Likert scale, remember Likert scale can be many, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10. Okay, that is as simple as that. But people can use different dimension in order to distinguish between the smallest so-called severity until the big or the most severe. All right. Then, okay, risk assessment. Again, we go back to the list. Here, gather information about hazard, and then identify who are being exposed, how long, and then calculate the likelihood, and then the severity. This is an example of severity likelihood. This is example of fatality. And then at the end of the day, you associate them with what kind of risk level. Is it low, medium, or high? By looking at the risk matrix table. Okay. Okay, this is an example of risk matrix. This is what we call probability. No, this is the severity. Severity. This is the chance. See, 4 Likert scale, 1, 2, 3, 4. This 1, 2, 3, 4. When you times those value together, then you are going to get some kind of risk range or risk level. Perhaps the next one would be better to show you. Okay, example of using 5 Likert scale. You see, 1 is inconceivable, remote, conceivable, possible, most likely. That will be for probability. And then another example for severity will be 5, catastrophic. This is the biggest thing. Fatal, serious, minor, negligible. Okay. This is what I call risk matrix. Risk matrix based on the DOSH hierarchy guideline. You can Google the risk matrix, and you can see there are a lot of risk matrix table around, and they could give you different scales. So it depends. Okay, so you can just simply take one of the scale as a reference. It depends, because this is just example. Okay, so let's say if the probability is 1, and then severity is 1, so 1 times 1 is basically equal to 1. So this is how you get the values. The maximum value, 5 times 5 will be 25. And the one being shown in red color can be considered in the range of high, see, high risk. The medium one would be in the yellow there, and then the low one is green. Okay, so this is just example given by DOSH guideline. Different agency will have, sometimes they do have low from 1 to 5. It doesn't matter. Okay, once you calculate, anyway, the value will fall under this category at the end of the day. Okay, why do we classify low, medium, and high? Because once you calculate the risk, for instance, you do have 10 activities. that you figure out with regard to, let's say, site preparation work, site clearing, cut and fill, topsoil removal, etc., etc. Let's say 10 activities. So when you calculate, then you will get different range of value. For instance, site clearing could be 15, cut and fill could be 25, and then what else? So if you want to tell workers, you have to be careful with regard to working at this situation or this area, because the risk is 25. Then you are going to tell another person the risk is 20. So at the end of the day, they might not remember the values. So that's why you use a simple wording, low, medium, or high, so that people remember, oh, okay, this is high risk. Okay. So when you are working with high risk, then you need to be very extra careful. Okay. The issue is that once you calculate, you need to ask, is the risk tolerable? Tolerable means maybe it is low or very low. When they are low, meaning to say they are not in an urgent situation that you need to do something. Okay, you can leave that thing alone, but then you need to monitor, because the risk can grow bigger and bigger by the days. You never know. They keep changing. Okay, so perhaps you don't do anything yet because it's still not a priority. So if the risk is too high or in a medium level, then perhaps you can put more effort. Okay, more effort, put more precaution in order not to have people getting all kind of injury or whatnot. Okay, you divert your energy into those high risk first. Okay, now we are going into the last step of hierarchy. First step is HI, hazard identification. Second step is RA, risk assessment. And then the third step is basically controlling the risk. Remember, I told you earlier about the hierarchy of control. Okay, hierarchy of control meaning to say there are certain control measure, control type, where they could be considered as most effective. And then at the end of the day, the lowest one being least effective. So there are also level of effectiveness that we can associate with control. Okay. Now let's take a look at, before we go into the level, risk control. Where can you get the so-called reference? You can refer to code of practice, industry or trade association, specialists, material safety data sheet. Normally when you buy product, especially substance, the manufacturer will give you material safety data sheet where all kind of precaution is being shown there. So when you mix the material together, you need to be very careful. So all kind of instruction or labeling with regard to that thing. And then instruction from manufacturer, and we can classify the hierarchy of risk in terms of most effective, quite effective. For the case of most effective, elimination. Example of, if you can eliminate the hazard, that would be perfect. But in most situations, you cannot eliminate. And then quite effective, you can substitute or isolate. Okay. Then fairly effective, for instance, engineering control. Least effective, example, administrative control. And the last one is basically PPE, personal protective equipment. And the last sentence here, I mentioned here, is a very important sentence. Control measures are not mutually exclusive. Meaning to say, there is no one control measure that you can use that can solve all your problem. Meaning to say, you must use the control measure in combination. In combination meaning to say, they could be most effective measure. So maybe you will use that thing, one, and then combination with PPE, combination is with engineering control and administrative control. Then only you are going to have a perfect control measure. Okay, you just simply cannot rely on one item, PPE. PPE is the last thing that you basically can rely on, because you know the nature of PPE is very loose. Okay, at the end of the day, you cannot be 100% sure you are going to be protected by just simply using PPE. Okay, and in terms of hierarchy, normally we can show something like this. In terms of effectiveness, I can say this is Likert scale 5. Let me show you. This is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we can attach again Likert scale so that we understand the measure that we choose is in what category. 5 is being the most effective. 4 meaning to say maybe just simply effective. 3 could be moderate. 2 could be slightly effective. And then less effective or least effective. Okay, least effective, that could be a better word. And you see, the most effective could be elimination. If you can eliminate the source of hazard, then basically you will have no hazard. When there is no hazard, there is no risk. As simple as that. But most of the time, it might not be possible. Okay, then substitute with something else. Okay, something else, either you use a different machinery, component, whatever it is. Then basically in this situation, we give example of a noise. Sometimes when you are working with certain machinery, it is very noisy. And when that machinery is getting old and older, it will get more noisy. So substitute. If you substitute with a different part of the machinery, then basically it's going to work perfectly. Then you eliminate the source of noise. Then engineering control. Engineering control is the word associated that when you need to design something, use some kind of method to calculate in terms of material, in terms of what, that is what we call engineering control. In construction, I can relate engineering control, for instance, safety net. Okay, in order to avoid certain material from dropping into your head, we must basically put a safety net. So safety net is basically example of engineering control. And at the edge of the building or the stair, we normally design the handrail. So that handrail, we can call it safety engineering control. So whenever you need to design something using all kind of engineering calculation, problem solving, that's what we call engineering control. Then administrative control. So what is administrative control? Example of administrative control can be, okay, can be associated with rotation, work rotation. Let's say when people have to work in a noisy area, instead of letting one guy working for 8 hours for the whole day, why don't we just simply let that guy working for 1 hour and then rotate the work with others? Okay, every person will work only 1 hour in that particular area. Okay, so that we can reduce the impact of noise. That could be not be a permanent solution, but at least we already minimize the noise issue. And then another example of administrative control is what we call poster. All kind of poster. Let's say cautious. Please be cautious. Please use different ways. Exit, enter. So all kind of warning signs, that's what we call administrative control. Why it is being put at the lower or level of effectiveness? Because sometimes even though you put notice, but somebody don't care about the notice. They don't even read the notice. So that's why administrative we can use, but in terms of level effectiveness, you never know. If people follow the instruction, then it is okay. If people do not follow, then it's not going to be effective. And the last one is PPE. Okay, PPE. Whatever PPE, how expensive is that PPE, is normally only being put at the lowest level. So meaning to say, just take one example, the safety helmet. If you have ever wore the safety helmet, it's just a piece of plastic. What exactly piece of plastic can protect your head? Not much actually. But having a safety helmet is better than having none. Okay, at least. But that's why it is being put at the lowest level. Okay? Not only you need to wear PPE, but the management also need to put the safety net so that perhaps all the big thing will not be dropping onto your head. Maybe if it is passed through, only a small one. Small one can be absorbed by your perhaps your safety helmet. And that is the concept. Okay. And in terms of hierarchy of control, if we want to show in terms of pyramid, how significant is that? The elimination is the biggest thing. Okay, if you can eliminate, that will be have the biggest potential to affect your control measure. Okay, and then second one is substitute, engineering control, and then last one is basically PPE. But the issue with this uh, hierarchy of control, the first one, okay, the first one is basically normally have something to do with design. Let's say if we do not want to have a hanging ceiling in all of our room in the building, by right you should design that way. But since you already design in all of our building in SKA anyway, we do have a hanging ceiling. That hanging ceiling have a potential to drop, okay? Because it was not being designed that way. By right, we should be, let's say we want to make way, do not want to have a hanging ceiling. By right, from the beginning of design, we should be thinking along that way, okay? So that's why most of the safety issue has something to do with the design, poor design. So now, even in Malaysia, we are trying to integrate between design and then safety. So at the end of the day, perhaps we do not want the issue of safety of our building that we do have now happen again and again because of being a poor design. All right, let's take example with regard to COVID-19. You see, people also come up with all this hierarchy of control. The first, elimination, you see, elimination. If, for instance, eliminate, isolate yourself from the world, if possible, okay, you can go to the moon, perhaps, then you are relatively safe. But that could not be practical. If you cannot do the first one, then you will go to the second one. What is the second one? Substitute. If you cannot isolate, use remote mean or work. Now, for instance, we are in isolation. Okay, we have to stay at home. Basically, avoid contact. So that is example because the virus is everywhere. You never know. Okay, in order not to get contact with that thing, You stay at home, that will be safer. And then engineering control. What is engineering control? Keep a check on your body temperature, coughing, sneezing, and wash your hand frequently. That is example. Okay. Admin control. Maintain social distance. When you need to go out, okay. So if you are 1 or 2 meters away from people, at least that could be better. But you never know. If you go to the shopping complex, sometimes it is very difficult. So that's why administrative control is not going to be most effective, because sometimes you also forgot that you are in the COVID situation, because you thought you are still okay. And PPE. So now we are wearing all kind of face masks. So is that going to be very effective? You never know. Okay. So having wearing mask is okay. Okay, but it's not going to be 100% protect your body. Okay. So again, with regard to elimination, normally it uh, it has something to do with design. So that's why in construction, if we want to eliminate many hazards, we must come up with the design. Okay, so normally people do not put that kind of thinking during design work. So, but this is the hierarchy of control. How about reality? You see, in reality, people inverted this pyramid. People spend more on or practice more on PPE. Instead, they should rely less on PPE, put more effort on bigger thing, because the bigger thing is the one that can basically be more effective. But the issue is that why do people go for PPE or even administrative control or even engineering control? Engineering control sometimes could be very cheap mean of doing things. Huh? PPE, admin, because this is the cheapest. People go for the cheapest. The cheapest doesn't mean that it's going to be most effective. And that is the situation. By right, we should be thinking along this line, this inverted pyramid. Okay, the most effective is basically we can eliminate, then we can substitute, doing engineering design, then only administrative, and then PPE, the last one. Okay, all right. You see, PPE. People can come up with PPE by their own because the employer do not provide them. Pity them, because by right under the law, under our law, is this the right of the employer to provide those things free of charge. Okay, so this is PPE also, but if you look at this PPE, it's not going to do much to the workers. At the end of the day, if they have been working for many years, perhaps 10 years, then they will get all kind of illness or disease. If they trace back, then only we know they got the disease, illness due to the workplace. That is not something that we are happy at. Huh? We try to avoid those things as much as possible. And then the last part is monitoring and review. Okay, let's say you already conducted the three part hierarchy, hazard identification, risk assessment, and then risk control. So the last one is basically risk review. Why you need to review risk? Because sometimes when you conducted this hierarchy exercise, you conducted this exercise at the beginning of the project, the start of the project. And then you start the project, then the project will go on, and then you never know what could be the changes that happen with regard to new people coming in and out of your workplace, new work process, new material could be introduced, and the assessment that you did is not going to be accurate anymore. and the control measure that you propose is not going to be relevant anymore. You need to revise. This is what you call review. Okay, review. So you conduct hierarchy exercise, and then you put them into so-called hierarchy form or hierarchy table. You can Google hierarchy form or hierarchy table. Then there are many ways that people basically will put the hierarchy information inside. The one that we have is basically, this is the example given by DOSH guideline. Okay, this is what we call hierarchy form. Okay, hierarchy form. Normally, hierarchy form do have a few column. We call it column and row. This is what we call row. You can have many row as possible. You can add many rows. But the most important thing is the information that you need to capture. Okay. First, hazard identification. In hazard identification, first thing first, in the first column, you list out all the work activities. What are the work activities? For instance, site clearing, cut and fill, remove topsoil, grading, excavation, and then rebar, formwork, etc., until the end of the project. So those are the work activity. And among those work activity, for sure, in every work activity, there could be a potential hazard. So you list out all the hazard. Okay, either it could be fall, and when you jot down fall, it can be what can cause, maybe injury or fatal. Injury also, you can put level of injury, serious injury, and whatnot. And then this is what we call hazard identification. So you finish on the first wording there, HI. Then you move into risk analysis. Risk analysis. In risk analysis, you might want to start with existing risk control. So you take a look at the way people work, whether some kind of risk control is already being practiced. If, for instance, workers will wear safety helmet, so that is one form of risk control. But again, having safety helmet is not going to help you 100%. So next, you need to assess the likelihood. Okay, so in likelihood, you need to attach a figure 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's say you choose 4. Okay, 4. How about severity? Let's say you choose 3. 4 times 3 equal to 12. So 12 is what kind of level of risk? It's basically medium. And then you must list out the recommended measure in terms of hierarchy. You suggest a few of the measure. And then PIC. PIC is basically person in charge. If you know that you want to attach responsibility in terms of doing this kind of control measure monitoring, then you can put the name. If you do not have the name yet, then leave it blank. So this is where we capture our hierarchy exercise. We call it hierarchy form. Okay, hierarchy form. You see, once you list out all the activities, you can write down then what could be the potential hazard, which can cause what. This is just an example. You can just simply Google. After this, you can Google construction risk assessment. Okay, construction risk assessment. There are a lot of sample hierarchy form that people have come out with. So you can take a look at those things. Okay, I have seen a few. Just simply Google construction risk assessment. All right, then existing risk control, then you come up with the likelihood, severity, then you will get the risk. You identify them as low, medium, or even high. Then at the end of the day, you basically suggest control measure and even person in charge. Okay, so that is basically the whole process of hierarchy. And then,
Doctor,
yes, yes,
I'm sorry for interrupting.
okay,
This
okay.
paper, who write the information? Is it the risk manager?
If you have the risk manager, meaning to say people who are well versed about to do the risk assessment, then that could be the best person. If you do not that person, that you have safety and health officer, that could be another person which is quite knowledgeable. If not, that could that this kind of responsibility will fall under the project manager or even site engineer responsibility. So that's why I told you, if for instance, organization doesn't have any expert people who know how to do this, you can engage so-called consultant or specialists. They are
Yes.
organization basically call different company to come to the office and do some kind of this kind of exercise, and then they will produce the report, and then at the end of the day you need to pay them. Okay, so in organization like in Malaysia JKR nowadays, for project above, I think above 40 million ringgit, so it is a must that they have to go through the risk management exercise. So in that risk management exercise, I've seen they need to come out with the hierarchy form, not for the safety area itself, but for the whole project development phases. It could be a very lengthy form with many pages that cover almost everything during design stage, during tendering stage, during construction stage, during maintenance stage. You just imagine you can do the risk management exercise on almost anything. All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That's all for our class today. Okay. Any questions so far you have? You need to sign your attendance. Let me open up this QR code. Wait a second. Where is that thing? Okay, let's see here.